Joining us now is the one and only Congressman from Virginia's 2nd District. Virginia's 4th District, Republican Randy Forbes. Congressman, great to have you with us.
John, thanks for having us. Always good to be with you.
Congressman, let's go right to Egypt. A lot of things unfolding right now. John McCain calling for a suspension of our, $1.5 billion in aid to the Egyptian military as that government tries to sift through new elections. What do you make of it?
Well, John, if you take Senator McCain's statement and just put it on the shelf temporarily, the law itself, in my opinion, requires a suspension of that aid, because the law very clearly says if you have a coup in a country such as Egypt or another country which is getting foreign aid, we have to suspend the foreign aid to them at that particular time. I don't think there's any way you parse the words and find that this wasn't a coup. We certainly didn't have a new election. We didn't have something that took place. And so the administration, I think, based on the law, has to suspend that aid. Now, if they want to try to change the law, that's okay. They can try to do that. But I think as the law is currently written, they need to suspend the aid.
So if we were to go ahead and do that, what type of an impact do you think that would have on our relationship with the new Egyptian government, sir?
Well, John, if you get to the point in time, which I think we've rapidly arrived at that point, where some of these countries just take for granted that they're going to get this aid, and it serves very little purpose in trying to dissuade them from bad activities, then I think we need to relook the purpose of giving the aid anyway.
Right.
And, John, when you look at the situation that I'm looking around our area and around Virginia, I see so many people that are on furloughs that were just unfair, the way this administration has cut national defense here at home, the way they continue to cut national defense. And then I look at us giving money to a military like Egypt and some of the atrocities that, or at least the reports we're getting back that they're doing. I think it's hard to look ourselves in the eye in the mirror and say we want to continue spending that money there unless we see some major shifts and changes.
Because of what's happened in Egypt, our involvement with the Syrian rebels has gotten off the news cycle radar screen. Has your position on that evolved at all?
No, my position on Syria has been consistent. I don't think we should get involved in Syria. John, if there ever was a time or a window when we could have impacted the situation in Syria, I question whether there was, but if there was, it's long gone. And the problem in Syria is we don't know who's wearing the white hats and who's wearing the black hats and who's going to be wearing the white hats tomorrow. And I'll just tell you this: I think it's not really subject to substantial debate that to get involved in Syria, you will start an escalation with Russia, China putting money on the other side, and it'll be a bidding war. But the second thing, John, is we will be in there, according to our experts, for as long as 10 years to try to do anything of substance there. I think that's a huge mistake, given how thin we have stretched ourselves already around the globe.
Congressman Forbes, having said that, how do we get around President Obama's red line and the lack of credence that might due to the office of the President of the United States, especially in lieu of the fact that he said no chemical weapons are going to be deployed, and now we understand that they were?
Well, two things, John. First of all, that's why the President should have had a more coherent foreign policy throughout the entire administration that they just have not had. And the President needs to be very careful about making statements like that they're not prepared to back up. But really, when you talk about hurting the credibility of the presidency, it's not that statement that's hurt it. It's the fact that they've been basically willing to throw out the rule of law in this administration, so that they've come in and said if they don't like a law or if they want to just change a law, they can do it without having to go through Congress. And you can look at what they did with the health care bill, which they had no legal right to do that. If you look at what they did in Libya, which they had no legal right to do that in Libya. If you look at some of this NSA stuff that's come out, I can tell you they had no legal right to do some of that. If you look at some of the laws in immigration that they've just said they're not going to enforce, I think that's hurt it far worse than just not backing up a red line statement.
Congressman, I want to get to the domestic front. Senator Harry Reid from Nevada Majority Leader now jumping up and down, saying that he's going to invoke the nuclear option. Explain to our audience what all this means.
Well, basically, what Senator Reid is saying is if he can't get his way, then he is going to change the rules of the Senate completely, because Senator Reid believes that the end always justifies the means. If he does that, John, he sets off a situation where the Senate will come to even a greater standstill than what the Senate has been. One of the things you would hear Senator Reid constantly talking about in the past is how dangerous it would be to change this rule, but now he's thinking very seriously about doing it. And the second thing is Senator Reid will constantly be saying, he just can't understand why Republicans and Democrats in the House don't sit down and talk about issues and that they need to do it. Well, in this particular situation, that's what he needs to do. He needs to sit down with the Republican minority and try to figure out a way forward by actually negotiating some of the legislation that's out there instead of just trying to strong-arm it through and having to change these rules. But we don't know what he's going to end up doing. I guess we're going to find out in a few days.
All right, we appreciate that. Final question, Congressman. I know that we had a time constraint. Immigration reform now making its way through the House. I tell you what's concerning a lot of conservatives. It's another one of these closed-door meetings where somebody's deciding in a non-transparent fashion. How do you think this thing proceeds through the House, and what, in your view, should we do?
John, first of all, to reassure everybody, in the Senate, that's exactly what happened. They had 8 people met behind closed doors. Nobody knew what they were doing. They came out and said, here's the bill, take it or leave it. In the House, though, it is doing exactly the opposite. We are doing nothing behind closed doors. All of ours is up front. It is before the Judiciary Committee. Both sides get to put in any amendments they want, fully transparent. We're taking it piece by piece by piece so that everybody can weigh in, everybody can see the ramifications, and you don't get one of these massive pieces of legislation where you say, oh, there's 100 different things, we didn't know what was in there until we read it. I think the House has taken the right approach. I think at the end of the day, they'll have a good piece of legislation. I totally reject the way the Senate is conducting their business.
Why can't we first secure the southern borders of the United States, make sure that works, whether it's adding the troops, adding the wall, adding the fence, whatever we do, and then look at a path to citizenship or amnesty or whatever? Why does it have to be combined?
Well, a couple points. First of all, John, remember, we already have a path to citizenship. What we're talking about is people who didn't want to walk down that path and refused to go down that path and wanted to make their own path. The second thing is, you're exactly right, and that's the approach the House has taken. We can booster our enforcement of the existing laws that we have. And just one point, though, John, it's not just the fence and keeping people coming across the border. That's a part of it. But about 40% of the illegal immigration, according to some individuals who testified, is not coming across the border where a fence would be. They're using these day visas and things and coming in saying they're shopping in the United States or just working temporarily and never leaving and going back.
Right.
And the Senate bill really doesn't address that at all. That's what we try to address.
You know, we've got about 8% unemployment still in the United States. Some people say effective unemployment is over 10%. Many people just abandon trying to find a job. Why do we need an additional 100,000 HB1 visas?
Well, John, there's no question that we've got a lot of unemployment. But if you ask our employers out here, many of them will say that they've actually tried to hire people over the last year. And believe it or not, they have a huge time getting people to come to work for 3 reasons. One of them is they say they can't get them to pass the drug test, as shocking as that may be. Second, they can't get people who will just show up. And the third thing is, we hear it over and over again, they get paid so many benefits sometimes to not work that some of the people who could work actually don't try to get these jobs. And one of the things that we think we ought to be able to do is, if we don't have Americans who are willing and prepared to take some of these jobs, we ought to be able to allow skilled people to come in and perform some of those tasks. And that's why we have carefully drafted a piece of legislation that will accomplish that purpose, but not take away American jobs in the process. House has done that. Senate has not.
And how do you think that would directly impact Congressman jobs in Virginia?
I think actually, if you do the House approach, it will help jobs in Virginia, because you got to realize that, John, on many of these situations where you bring in X number of skilled workers or individuals to do some of the tasks that we can't get done in the United States, it keeps businesses going that actually are employing Virginians 4 times as many Virginians as the people that come in to do the work. If you don't have people doing those work, sometimes we lose those companies and you lose all those Virginia jobs in the process.
Okay, we are out of time. Congressman Randy Forbes, Republican from Virginia. It's always a pleasure, sir, to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. Have a good day.